This is episode 12 with John Lee Dumas.
The Entrepreneur Unleashed. The Entrepreneur Unleashed. The Entrepreneurs Unleashed. The podcast where purpose and passion become revenue streams. Be real. Take a stand. Change lives. Here's your host, Patty Keating.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Unleashed show. I'm your host, Patty Keating. Entrepreneurs everywhere are creating a new breed of business success. They're making their own rules, taking a stand for their purpose, leading through integrity, and making money by changing lives. Join me each week for compelling messages that will inspire and empower you to unleash your true purpose. I am so excited about today's guest. I have with me John Lee Dumas. John is the founder and the host of Entrepreneur on Fire, a top-ranked podcast. In fact, it was named Best in iTunes in 2013. And John interviews today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. And he does that 7 days a week. He's been featured in both Time and Inc. magazine. And he's the founder of Podcasters Paradise, a community where podcasters can create, grow, and monetize their podcast. Entrepreneur on Fire, get this, generates over 450,000 unique downloads every month. His guests have included Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, Barbara Corcoran, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Guy Kawasaki. You can find recaps of these episodes at eofire.com, and I will put that in the show notes for you at pattykeating.com/John Lee Dumas. So I just got to give you a quick heads up and then I'll bring him on. I am a member of Podcast Paradise, and this podcast was created with John's insights, wisdom, and help. So I'm so excited to bring him to you today. Hi, John.
Patty, I am prepared to ignite.
I am glad to hear that. So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself. I gave them the inside scoop from my perspective. I want to hear you tell us a little bit about who you are and what's going on with you.
So, Patty, you nailed it. I mean, I am the founder and host of Entrepreneur on Fire, which is a 7-day-a-week podcast interviewing inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. You know, my roots trace all the way back to the state of Maine. I'm just a country boy that went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship. So I spent 4 years as an active duty officer and 4 years in the reserves. 13 months in Iraq was one of my highlights there. And that was quite an experience for a 23-year-old leading 4 tanks and 16 men in a war-pitched environment. But fast forward a little bit, you know, I spent a semester in law school, and it was only one semester because I hated it and I quit. I went to corporate finance next in Boston with John Hancock, tried commercial and residential real estate in Southern California for a couple of years, and finally had my aha moment at the age of 32 for Entrepreneur on Fire. And 18 months later and 565 interviews later, here we sit.
That is called tenacity.
Boom.
So tell me a little bit about Entrepreneur on Fire. What inspired you to create it?
So my inspiration, Patty, was that there didn't exist a podcast that delivered a fresh episode 7 days a week that interviewed an inspiring and successful entrepreneur. I knew as a consumer of podcasts that I loved those that really got inside the journey of each of these successful entrepreneurs. And I wanted more. You know, these podcasts that came out once a week, I kept running out of content. So I knew there was a niche. I knew there was a void to be filled. Entrepreneur on Fire fit that void, filled that niche. And I just can't say enough about how much I've learned. And, you know, our goal to inspire millions is definitely getting there with our over 5.6 million downloads since September of 2012.
That's impressive. Very impressive. And you know what I love about you, John? Our motto over here at Unleashed Community is be real, take a stand, change lives. And that is what you are up to every day.
Every day.
You got to tap into your purpose and passion in order to find that. At 32, 42, 52, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's important that you do it.
I get emails from people that are 82 that I've inspired, Patty. So keep that rolling.
So, John, what major obstacles showed up on your path to success?
So many obstacles, Patty. The major one can really be summed up as the imposter syndrome, because it's one that we as entrepreneurs deal with all the time. And it's reared its ugly head time and time again for me on my journey. I mean, when I was supposed to launch back on August 15th, 2012, Patty, I woke up that day terrified, paralyzed with fear, because everybody was telling me that a 7-day-a-week podcast would not succeed. And, I was able to really put my blinders on and kind of silence out those, detractors for that long. But then all of a sudden, I was starting to agree with them. I woke up that morning paralyzed with fear, terrified, Patty. It was just like one of those things where I was like, wow, all of these detractors are right. And you know what? If I don't launch my podcast, then wow, nobody's ever going to know if I fail. I can't succeed, but at least I can't fail. And I don't want to fail. So I pushed it back 15 days. I pushed it back another 15 days. A third time, Patty, I pushed it back because I was scared each and every time. But finally, on September 22nd, my mentor, Jamie Tardy, she said, John, if you don't launch your podcast today, I will fire you. And I said, whoa, I definitely don't want that to happen. So you know what? I launched my podcast. 3 months later, I'm speaking at New Media Expo. Here we are a year later, generating over 6 figures a month. And then 6 months after that, you and I are talking on this podcast, Patty, still going strong.
We need those mentors.
Need the mentors.
Oh my gosh. And that takes, that's a good mentor. Do it or you're fired. That's one way to get over imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. It worked.
So how did you move through the challenges that you experienced?
I really decided to embrace the challenges, Patty, instead of kind of letting them paralyze me anymore. Because, those 5 weeks of being paralyzed, like they were, 5 of my most difficult weeks because, I was always that person, that officer in the Army that hit challenges head on and just did my best. And this is the first time I really let fear kind of paralyze me because, as an entrepreneur, there's no safety net. In the Army, if I failed, well, that paycheck was still going to come in. I was just going to get reprimanded and then we'll move on and hopefully I'll succeed next time. But, entrepreneurs have this overriding fear that if we fail, then it's all over. Like, we're going to be living under a bridge somewhere, begging for food, like you name it. And, of course, that fear 99.9 times out of 100 proves to be unfounded, but it's still there. And so for me, I just embraced that imposter syndrome. I embraced that fear and said, you know what? I'm actually happy that I'm feeling this fear because that means that every other person is feeling this fear. And most people are letting it stop them from doing great things, which is why it's just so much more easy to get to that 1% of people that aren't, because so many people are letting it stop them. So when you start to feel fear, realize that that's stopping others. Don't let it stop you.
Yes. What lessons have you learned as a result of the challenges and moving through this fear?
Just start. Those 2 words are so powerful. And if anybody needs a little inspiration in the book format, either audio or written, read the books The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and then The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Those 2 books show you that by just starting, doing little things every single day to get closer to your goal will have massive, great compound effects down that road. So no matter how small, how minimal those actual steps, those actions that you're taking may seem right now, they will truly result in something massive down the line.
We'll put those in the show notes too, so you guys can check those out.
Ooh.
What are you passionate about right now, John?
I'm passionate about serving my community, Patty. And, to really put a story behind that passion, with Podcasters Paradise, we launched on October 31st, 2013. And that's our flagship community where we teach people how to create, grow, and monetize their podcast. Now, it's been incredibly successful. We have over 800 members, Patty, you being one of, our star members of Podcasters Paradise, and it's generated over $475,000 since launch on October 31st. And now the interesting point of that is that 86% of those sales, Patty, have come on a live webinar. And I don't know if that's actually where you purchase or if you purchase in another manner, but when somebody has 86% of their sales, amounting to over $400,000 in just 5 months happening by doing a certain tactic, which for us was a live webinar, people start asking questions. And when people start asking questions, Patty, as an authority figure, as a podcast host, as a leader, you listen. And so I listened to these questions, and they were saying, John, how do you create these live webinars? How do you present them? How are you converting sales on these live webinars? And it dawned on myself to create Webinar on Fire, how to create, present, and convert your webinar. And that course is actually not even going to be going live till April 18th, but we've already sold just under $10,000 worth of early bird beta testers into that program. And it's something that we're so excited about. So, I mean, Patty, that's what we're passionate about right now. And it all came from listening to our audience.
And I love that you do that. You do that so well. I see it in the community. A question will come up and you will find a solution. Sometimes you'll monetize it. Sometimes you'll just do a quick video, but you always respond to the market.
I love my audience, Patty, and I love serving them.
I can tell. So here's the big question. I'm going to stretch you a little bit. What's your vision for the next 5 years?
Well, that is stretching me a bit because I can honestly tell you that I don't look further than 6 months into the future. Yeah. I believe, especially in today's age, things are happening so quickly. Things are just changing and, pivoting so quickly that it's kind of a waste of time and a waste of effort to really plan things much further out. You asked me a month ago, Patty, how the launch of Webinar on Fire was going to go. I would have said, what's Webinar on Fire? Because it didn't exist yet. And now it's our 100% focus, besides our other things. And, that is like the way that we live. So I'm just enjoying this ride that I'm on. I'm looking to serve my audience today, to live in the present moment. I know that I'm going to continue to live frugally, and I'm going to continue to look to monetize in a very powerful but intelligent way. And so, if things do change negatively for us in the future, we can ride those storms out. So we're just looking to live in the moment, Patty.
Yeah, awesome. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the growth experience you've had throughout your life, really. I know you've shared your adult life with us, but looking back over the entire course of your life, what's the best advice you've ever received?
I received a lot of great advice. And when I really look back to my earlier days, if we kind of want to go back there, it would have to be really from my father. So, here you have a guy who got married at 28 years old. At that time when he got married, he was a JAG officer in the U.S. Army. So, he retired from the Army, and then he came back to Maine, where he was born and raised, and where his wife was also born and raised, and they bought a home, and he hung up his own shingle as a lawyer. Now, not a lot of people look at lawyers as being entrepreneurial, but when you are running your own business, your own law practice, you are entrepreneurial because you're the one that's hiring and firing the secretaries. You're the one that's taking care of the actual building. You're paying all of the bills. You're having to be the marketer. You're having to, find clients for yourself. So you're having to wear all the different hats that we as entrepreneurs have to wear as well, Patty. So, I saw my father go through so many transitions as a lawyer. First his sole focus was on workers' compensation back in the 80s. And then in the 90s, it moved to real estate. And then in the 2000s, it moved to Social Security compensation. So, it was just amazing to see that he would just wait, for these opportunities to arise, and then he would jump on them. And then when the wind shifted, he would jump on that next wave. And I always loved that flexibility. And that's why I knew that I wanted to be in an industry, in a business that would allow me to do the same. And I truly believe that Entrepreneur on Fire, gives me control of my own destiny. So when that next opportunity arises, like a live webinar, why? Because Google Hangouts came out with a way to stream them live for free to an unlimited audience, and they automatically record it, and it goes onto your YouTube page. I mean, it's amazing. If you just are keeping your eyes open and you build that audience and you look to serve them, how beneficial that can be to the bottom line. And so my father taught me that at a young age, John, always be in a position to take advantage of that next opportunity. So that was really his advice. And that was really the best advice I've ever received.
That's great advice. So what personal growth have you experienced as a result of this journey of yours?
A lot of personal growth. I mean, one of the major things was, going back to the imposter syndrome, because I spent my entire life with a safety net below me. First it was being, at home when you're under 18 years old. And then it was in college, I had the dorms and the cafeteria that I knew I could go get food at every day. And then it was the Army, for 4 years, that was, providing me food, shelter, and, a way of living. And then it was corporate finance with a healthcare plan. And then it was real estate with great opportunities there. But, when it really came to launching my business as an entrepreneur and having to face and to feel that raw fear with that net being taken away, that's where my real growth started. When I realized, hey, do I want to be someone that is always going to be relying on somebody else, is always going to be answering to somebody else's beck and call and to be on somebody else's agenda and somebody else's calendar? Or am I going to tackle this fear, really absorb it and embrace it and get through it so I can be in control of my own destiny?
That's awesome. I'm taking that in.
Absorb it.
So let's talk about tools and resources. What kind of gadgets or tools do you use to make your life easier?
Wow, my number one tool that I use that you've actually experienced, Patty, I'm not sure if you use it for your show, but I use it to book Entrepreneur on Fire. And then when you reached out to me for me to be on your show, I sent you my schedule once link. And I love this tool, Patty. It's the best scheduling software that I found out there, that instead of you and I going back and forth 5 times trying to find a time that worked, that one link provided the times that I was available to be interviewed. You chose one. It gave you all the information you needed. It booked it automatically in your time zone on your calendar. It sent you reminders. It lets you know everything. And it did the same thing for me as well. So it's taking me from having to schedule 30 interviews a month with very busy entrepreneurs. And on top of that, I do 8 of these interviews every single Saturday on other people's shows. So I'm doing 16 a week, 64 a month, total with my show and other shows, from going, this mayhem of back and forth emails to one simple link, one simple response. You do the rest. And it's been so powerful.
I do use it. I feel the same way. It's just such a time saver.
Such a time saver. And another few tools that I really enjoy, one is Workflowy. It's a cloud-based to-do list where you can keep your right in the cloud. They have an app as well. And so wherever you are, you can see, what you have to do today, this week, this month. You can keep passwords there. Like you can reference phone numbers. They have a great search bar tool that I love to use. It's just a really simple, minimalistic, powerful to-do list. And then, of course, we run our entire company off of Google. When it comes to Gmail, Google Docs, Google Drive, like you name it, we're using it. And we love those tools.
I love that. I love Google. I just heard about Workflowy yesterday from Kate, and I was playing with it this morning. It's pretty impressive.
It's amazing.
So what resources do you recommend? Books, blogs, podcasts?
Well, there's so many out there. One thing I would first and foremost recommend is don't just be a consumer. Don't be that person that's just reading everything you can get your hands on, listening to everything that you can get your ears on. Be a producer as well. I mean, Patty, you're a producer. You're producing this podcast. You're producing content on your blog. We're doing the same thing here at Entrepreneur on Fire. And I see so many people that spend so much time just consuming, but never producing. So make sure there's some kind of balance there. At first, maybe it's 70% consuming so you can learn and 30% producing. And as time goes on, as your business becomes more successful, it should flip-flop. And I can honestly say now, I'm at about probably 95% producing and a 5% consuming. The only time I truly consume any podcast, because I love podcasts, but the only time that I consume them is when I go on my daily, so it is daily that I am consuming them, but my daily jog here in San Diego. I'm listening to a podcast. I love Pat Flynn's new Ask Pat podcast. It's amazing because it's quick, it's bite-sized, it's a lot of fun. I love Lead Page's new podcast, Conversion Cast, which is, again, short, 10, 12 minutes to the point of one great tactic to employ in your business. So I love that as well. As far as books, I mean, there's a great book out right now called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yes.
Have you read that, Patty?
Yes.
Powerful. Yes. I mean,
it's tough because there's so many books that come out and so many of them are just saying, you know, small variations of the same thing. But I did find that this book really got to the core quick,
kept it interesting all the way throughout. And it's powerful for any entrepreneur to read.
Absolutely. So looking back, if you were to do this all over again, what would you tell your younger self?
So I would tell my younger self to launch faster. You know, that 5 weeks that I delayed launching when I was supposed to launch on August 15th, and I ended up launching Entrepreneur on Fire on September 22nd. That's my $100,000 mistake, because the only thing that I did by pushing my podcast launch back 5 weeks was push everything back 5 weeks.
Yes.
So in October of 2013, a year later, when we had our first 6-figure month, that would have been in September, because that's just the timeline that I was on at that point with Entrepreneur on Fire. So launch faster. I mean, I was never going to be ready to launch a podcast. You know, I was an inexperienced host. I was robotic. I was scripted. I was nervous. I was terrified. I had no experience. And I just had to start. I had to get better. And you know what? My early listeners, they forgive me. And in fact, they embrace the fact that I was there, that they were there with me, hearing my journey, hearing me get better.
Yeah, there's something about that vulnerability that people love. You're real.
They love it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your wisdom. Love everything you're doing, and so excited to share you with the audience, John.
Well, Patty, I love what you're doing. You're an incredibly valuable member of Podcasters Paradise, so thank you for that. You definitely get the value exchange proposition that we live and breathe by. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for letting me share with your audience a little bit about my journey. And I can't wait to catch you on the flip side.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Entrepreneur Unleashed Show. If you did, please go to pattykeating.com and let me know what you're up to this year in your business. While you're there, be sure to grab your copy of 5 Quick Ways to Share Your Expertise.